My name is Ryan Cedermark. Today I'm also known as Dr. Josh Axe's Hype Man. What's up? So I just want to tell you a little bit about what I'm going to be talking about. I'm going to review a case study, and when I was in school I got into the neurology behind chiropractic. And the reason I really got involved with neurology is because I conquered low back pain my first week in practice, or at least I thought I did. So what happened was I was working in a small town in North Carolina, and my doctor that hired me went out of town for the weekend, obviously, because he had a new doc in. This lady comes in Friday afternoon, one of the last patients. She's like freaking out. She kind of comes in hunched over. I'm like, oh gosh, what is this? Because whenever you're covering an office, you're like, oh please, just like wellness patients come in. Let me do some regular adjustments. So she comes in and she's like, where's Dr. Adams? And I was like, calm down, lady. I was like, what's wrong? And she's like, I need Dr. Adams. My back is killing me. And I said, well, he's out of town this weekend, but I can probably help you. She's like, no, you have to help me. This is my anniversary weekend. I've been driving across country. She was a semi-truck driver, and she had really bad sciatica. So I said, oh my gosh, okay, I think I can help you. And she's like, no, you don't understand. You have to help me because my husband and I are going away this weekend to the mountains to go do bendy things. And I was like, okay, are you like a yoga instructor? And then realized, yes, she has to be able to move her body in certain ways. And so all of a sudden I had this higher sense of calling. I was like, okay, I gotta fix her back pain, but I have to make sure she has like the bendiest of bendy weekends. So I'm like, all right, let's get you in the room. And going through my head, I'm like, oh man, I don't know what I'm doing. Like I'm like, my side posture kind of sucks right now. Should I use the drops? I don't know. There's a vibrocursor over there. Maybe I'll use that. So get her on the table. She like looks over at me again. She's like, you're going to fix me. And she just laser beams my eyeballs. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like this lady has so much confidence in me. And then all of a sudden she lay back down and I was like, I'm going to fix her. And did some things, sent her on her way for her bendy weekend, got down, said a prayer. She came back in the office Monday and she was walking in, kind of the same look. She had this like stern look. She was a semi-truck driver. And I was like, she's gonna kill me, she's gonna kill me. And then she gave me a big hug. And she's like, thank you so much. And I was like, yes, conquered low back pain. But then I went and tried to help more people with low back pain, and I couldn't figure it out. I was like, okay, I still am trying to figure this whole thing out. And what I realized is that that lady was so committed to getting better that I think she could have gotten better without my help. So some of the things that ran through my mind was where energy goes, the focus flows, right? We've heard that saying before. And then I also thought about, just do what you know. That's really important because I didn't know that much, but I did what I knew at the time. So I put her on the drop table, did some drops. And then the other thing that really hit home for me that first week in practice was the seeds that you plant in the soil of your mind. You've heard that saying too, where your thoughts are seeds and you can plant flowers or you can plant weeds. So all that ran through my head, and I started to really think about the neurology behind how these patients get better, what we're doing on our end to make sure that we're confident in the way that we provide care. So that's kind of my theme, and I take those little sayings with me along with every patient that I see. So if you believe in this saying, please stand up out of your chair. I know everyone wants to sit down, it's early. You can take your coffee with you. Okay, you've all just elected to be part of a neurological experiment. Thank you for standing up, stay standing up. Okay, so there's gonna be words that pop up on the screen. As fast as you can without even thinking about it, I want you to say the color of the word. Everybody ready? Here we go. Red. Louder.
Red. Blue. Orange. Purple. Orange. Blue. Green. Red.
You guys are really good. All right, let's keep going. Say the color of the word. Good job. All right, give yourselves a hand. So we kind of figured it out, right, along the way. This is called the Stroop Test. It was developed by a psychologist, but it also raises the question of cortical conflict. There's a couple areas of the brain that are responsible for trying to figure out what you see. We've got the right and the left side of the brain. We've got areas called the anterior cingulate gyrus, which are responsible for your emotional control, and then obviously your prefrontal cortex, which is what makes you human. The reason I want to show you that is because we use that as part of a therapy for our case. So I always ask the question, what happens in a subluxation to the brain? And I always kind of start big. So I started looking at the research and I said, okay, if there's a missing nerve, will the brain change? And the research shows that yes, it does change. Specifically, patients had a 13% to 22% reduction in cortical thickness in the opposite side of the brain, right? So you change a brain, you change a nerve, you can change a brain. I thought cutting nerves was hardcore, especially for chiropractic, so I wanted to see if there was just nerve impingement research. And what this showed was that in carpal tunnel syndrome patients, we see brain changes. There are clear morphometric changes in carpal tunnel syndrome brain. That's pretty cool, right? Now we know that if there's a peripheral nerve lesion, the brain will change. So let's take it a little bit closer to chiropractic now. Disturbed cervical proprioception affects perception of spatial orientation while in motion. So if you have altered proprioceptive input from the cervical spine, can it change your brain? And what the research says is yes, it can. So then I start to think, okay, if we've got changes in spine and we have changes in brain, can we change the brain with a chiropractic adjustment? I know we all know that we can, and we can do it in a very positive way, but I just wanted to look into the research. It helps me build confidence when I approach a case that I have no idea what I'm doing. So, does anyone know Dr. Heidi Havik? She's awesome, right? Not only is she an amazing researcher, she's also really cool to hang out with and very funny. So her and her team did some research, and they found, the title of this paper is Manipulation of Dysfunctional Spinal Joints Affects Sensory Motor Integration in the Prefrontal Cortex. So what they found was that, yes, there were changes in the brain after a chiropractic adjustment. They say manipulation, but I think it's nicer to call it an adjustment. My wife's a physical therapist, and they learn on the weekend how to do manips, and I'm like, you guys don't know how to adjust. Anyways. So what she found was that predominantly there were changes in the prefrontal cortex. Why is that important for us? Because the prefrontal cortex is what makes us human beings. So with that being said, if you can change the spine and you can provide a chiropractic adjustment, we can make people better humans. Is that not awesome? I mean, it's pretty awesome, right? I don't know, when I was a student, I didn't know that. I just thought it was like, oh, we'll make people go do bendy things on the weekends. But now I know that we can adjust the spine and change the brain. So this is cool.
Can you say bubbles?
Baba.
Can you say
So this is a baby learning how to talk.
Can you say mommy?
Baba.
Can you say mommy?
Baba.
Bubbles! Can you say mommy?
Baba.
Can you say fish? Fish. Can you say dog?
Daddy.
Can you say mommy?
Baba.
Can you say mommy?
Baba.
Bubbles!
So that's some random baby I found on Google. No, I'm just kidding, that's my son. It's been really fun watching him grow and learn, and I learn a lot about the brain watching him. It's pretty amazing. And notice in the video she never asked him to say dada, but whatever. But speech is a beautiful thing, right? Learning how to speak is a very important thing. What I'm going to talk about in a second is a case where someone has lost speech and how chiropractic can help get them back to getting their speech. So the case study I'm going to go over, I've got 10 minutes left, and I know I'm going fast, but if you have any questions after this, just go to the back of the room and ask Dr. Michael Hall. Don't let it, and Dr. Longear, because they're up later. And Dr. Longear loves to not take any breaks and answer lots of questions. And he helped me with this case. So this is a 15-year-old boy from Alaska who came to see us, and he had a really bad concussion. It was one of the worst that I've seen, to be honest. And what happened basically was he was playing ice hockey, he got cross-checked, he fell and hit the back of his head on the ice, and then a few days later he completely lost his ability to speak. And I'd never seen that before, and they called and they said, hey, can you do something? And I called Dr. Longear and I was like, what do you think about this? And he's like, yeah, let's get him down. Do what you know, right? You have to think about those things, because my first question was, did he go to a speech therapist? Did he go to a physical therapist? They're in Alaska, did he go to a chiropractor? No, they didn't go to a chiropractor. They did try everything else. And I feel like he kind of got lost in that segmental model of medicine. And what he really needed was just to be looked at the body, to be looked at as a whole, which is what we did for him. So I know there's issues with the neck in traumatic brain injury, especially if someone gets a whiplash injury and they fall and they hit their head, right? So I know how to treat cervical spines. So I started to look at the research, and basically it says, yeah, there's evidence of cervical spine involvement in traumatic brain injury, but there's a lack of sound evidence in literature. Darn it. Okay, I'll keep looking. So then I looked at this paper here, the clinical characteristics and outcomes of treatment in the cervical spine. And basically what they say is that neck treatment is a really important thing in concussion, post-concussion syndrome. So that's one of the places we started with this guy. We started to look at the x-rays of his neck. We started to look at the proprioceptive input from his cervical spine into his brain and how that was kind of changing things for his speech patterns. So concussions are really easy to treat. I'm just kidding. When I saw this, I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm doing again. Wait, Ryan, it's cool. Just go back, do what you know. It's not that bad. But there's a lot of neurochemistry that's involved with concussions. So one of the things we wanted to work on was changing all of his nutrition. He's a 16-year-old now. And if you tell them, oh, you live in Alaska, you should eat wild-caught Alaskan salmon. He's like, dude, there's McDonald's right next door. I'm not going to do that. They don't like that. But concussions can get really complicated. And then when you're providing treatment for concussions, it's really important. The research has shown that timing is really important because you can get changes in what's called the blood-brain barrier. And our body's made of barrier systems. So if the blood-brain barrier gets compromised, then we run into a whole host of problems because that's when you run into brain changes, negative brain changes. So timing was really important. He hadn't been able to speak for 2 months. So I knew that we really had to start care, start nutrition as soon as possible. So his chief complaints were brain fog, chronic fatigue, episodes of seizure-like activity. He was suffering from absence seizures. He was unable to play sports, and he had an inability to produce speech. So some of the things we found on the physical exam. We took x-rays. He had really poor posture, cervical kyphosis, ankle clonus bilaterally, which is an upper motor neuron lesion sign, and it's very pathological in nature, but for him, it was functional. We could actually change it and make it better. And if you don't know what that is, just ask Dr. Longyear in the back later. I'm just kidding. Dizziness with head tilted backwards. Anytime he moved his head, he'd have these alterations in proprioceptive input to his brain. It would make him feel dizzy. Difficulty performing coordinated movements on both sides, but especially on the left side. He was unable to perform one leg standing bilaterally, which if you're thinking about a 15-year-old hockey player, they should probably be able to stand on one leg for a little bit of period of time, right? It shouldn't be that hard. So I'm starting to look at this and I'm like, this kid's got a lot of coordination issues. And I know concussions are pretty complex, but things just aren't making sense right now. Maybe it's not a speech issue. Maybe it's a coordination issue with his brain. He had insane fatigue after minimal stimulation. He would come in for working, for doing his exercises with us, and even after like the first 10 minutes, he'd get super tired. So we'd have to take frequent breaks. And then he had an absent gag reflex. And Dr. Sullivan just mentioned vagus nerve. On the neurological exam that we do, I always look for areas of the brain that are responsible for vagal input and vagal output. And an absent gag reflex tells me that there's an impaired vagal tone, right? He doesn't have good vagal tone. So one of the exercises that we gave him were vagus nerve exercises. So the chiropractic adjustment was the foundation of everything. We started with that. We looked at the cervical spine, but then I asked myself, okay, concussions are really complex. Maybe he needs a complex treatment protocol. And this was a cool paper that I found that basically talks about post-concussion syndrome and the sensory processing issues, which is what I thought he was having. It mostly correlated to a lot of coordination issues. But this paper mentioned that if sensory processing is disrupted to the brain injury, one can intuitively conclude that multisensory integration is likely to be compromised. So if multisensory integration, which means a ton of different sensory input, our brain is a sensory being, right? It relies on good sensory input. That's why chiropractic works so well. But the language of the brain is also repetition. So it needed multisensory integration, input, and repetition to make his brain better. So he started doing some neurological rehab exercises. Chiropractic adjustments, this is a video game that we use. Vibration, gargling, mirror writing, vestibular rehab, low-level laser therapy, and then most importantly, neuroemotional technique. I had to finish that before because he says something at the end. I didn't want to ruin it. So we started working on these. He was in town for a week. We started working on these exercises. Since the accident, he hadn't been in skates. He hadn't gotten in skates. And we don't have a lot of ice here in Atlanta. So I had some rollerblades because I grew up playing roller hockey, which I was in Canada a few weeks ago and everyone made fun of me for. So thank you for not making fun of me today. But we put him in roller skates, right? We made his brain conquer that fear of lacing back up, right? Just the emotional part of that. He got back in and he started to feel better. He started doing different types of translational and vestibular exercises. Vibration gargling, mirror writing is what you'll see in a second. And of course, we would do 3 sessions a day, and I'd always start with checking mostly his cervical spine because that was the most, for lack of a better term, I would tell him, jacked up area of his spine. So we continued on, and this was after 2 days of treatment. I asked him to say B.
B.
So you can see, like, he can produce speech now, right? But it's very difficult for him to get that letter out. So I knew that we were making progress, and he looks happy. That was probably one of the first smiles that I saw from him after a few days of treatment. Even though I'd always go up and whisper in his ear, Jesse, the seeds that you plant in the soil of your mind. And he's looking at me like, this guy's so weird. Why does he do that? But I just kept doing it because thoughts are things, right? We've got to make sure that he's committed to getting better and that he knows he can get better. So that was after 2 days of treatment. We continued with therapy. This is a really cool exercise that Dr. Longyear showed me called mirror writing. Leonardo da Vinci used to do this. He was left-handed, so I think he was just trying to keep the ink off his hand, but it works pretty cool because it's a complex exercise. So we had him writing in mirror, and if you want to try it on a piece of paper, grab 2 pens. Some people can do it really good, some people are not that good at it. But we had him do it while he was trying to produce each letter, right? We had to start from ground zero with him. So after that, this is after 4 days.
My name is Jess.
So almost finished his name, right? But that's a full sentence. That's in one breath. That was really hard for him to do. But that's after 4 days, after almost 3 months of not being able to speak. So that's pretty cool. So about to head home to Alaska, and let's see if, I don't know if that'll play.
My name is Jesse.
I know that was low, but could you hear it? So it was a little more fluent, right? What I didn't tell you, one of the most important things about this was I called up Dr. Longyear over the weekend and I said, hey, what are you doing on a Saturday? You want to come in and see a patient? He's like, God, you're so annoying. And I was like, he's got to go back to Alaska. I need your help. I thought there was a huge emotional component to this case that I couldn't address. And so he went through and did NET, neuroemotional technique with him. And that, for him, opened up the floodgates. I think that was the thing that really took him over the edge, and that was right after an NET session. That was pretty cool. I'd never seen that before. So we're making progress, still has his ups and downs, and this is when he's back home.
Hey Dr. Ryan, woke up feeling pretty good today. Just gonna keep getting better, and just wanted to say thanks.
So that's cool, right? He's talking again. But then he's got his speech back. He still is suffering from some neurological issues. But then he starts texting me on the side, and he's like, dude, my dad's about to text you. Can you please tell him I'm okay to go back to playing hockey? And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't take this stress right now. Like, I can't make this decision. You guys got to go see a doctor up there. He's like, no. He'll only let me play if you say it's okay. So after we got his speech back, all he really cared about was getting back to playing hockey, which eventually he did. He's also a huge basketball player, and you can see, he's just shooting threes. His coordination's back. He's back to being a 15, now 16-year-old kid. And then in the bottom right corner, he sent me this article. One of the most notable performances was from the East goaltender, Jesse, who was under fire all night and finished with 58 saves, which is pretty darn good in a hockey game, especially for a shutout. So I just want to leave. My time's up. I knew I went through that fast, but I just want to leave with saying to all the students out there, I think you guys are the most important people in the room because the future of chiropractic is in your hands. And when you get out and practice, just do what you know and keep building on that. Making small marginal improvements every day, you're going to kick butt. So thank you so much.